Let me just tell you a quick bit about Aurora to start with. We operate across 4 brands, Coast, Oasis, Warehouse and Cranberry, which, although is a demerged business, still has the same ownership structure. You can see there that we operate in quite a lot of countries across the world, 1,500 stores globally across all the brands. I, before joining Oasis, was Group Multi-Channel Director of Aurora, so worked across all of them. And it tells you how much the world moves on, because I was called Group Multi-Channel Director. My replacement is called Group Omni-Channel Director. And I was, to be honest, a bit pissed off, because actually he's called God. And it's like, well, God, I did that for 2 years, and I didn't get the luxury of being called God. But anyway, good luck to him. Set a few traps his way. Anyway, so he's doing a great job. But as you can see, we operate on a global level. Our multi-channel strategy, or stroke omni-channel strategy, is predominantly concentrated in the UK, because that's where we test and learn. And our view is that we would be rolling that strategy out across the globe as we start to tie up the global inventory into a single place. But I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. So, 51 countries, over 1,600 stores, 22 digital channels, and total global sales of £800 million. This is a really interesting quote from BDO. Businesses will not survive and thrive if they do not take steps to understand the psychology of the new customer. They are and will be much more demanding. And in many ways, it sounds really obvious, and I guess we face it all the time, but when you actually look back, particularly as a retailer, at what your business is doing, in many ways we're still churning out the same old stuff. And actually it's the newness and the innovation which should be truly driving the business. So where that kind of brings me is to Generation X and Generation Y. So if you wouldn't mind, because I'm a bit old-fashioned because I'm Generation X, like a bit of audience participation. He's behind you, that's just you. So in terms of, could you just put your hand up if you were born after 1980? What, and you're proud of that, are you? Well done. Okay, so this is the bright young things. And as you can see, a large part of the audience. And as much as I hate you, because you have your entire future ahead of you, and you have long, fruitful careers, and whilst most of us will be sitting in a rocking chair going, we invented e-commerce, you guys will, I'm sure, be taking it onto new channels. But what's really interesting about this generation is they're very different to Generation X, although they share the same values. So let me tell you a little bit about the generation. So apparently, you get a rebellious generation followed by a conformist generation. So Generation X, that's me, we were rebellious. God, 18 and we were out of that door. It was goodbye mum, goodbye dad, we're getting on with our life. We're independent, we can do it all. And we embraced all the good things in life and all the bad things in life. Let's not go into that now. But the reality is we had loads of fun. And what we did, you know, Thatcher's children, we wanted to make a success of something. And we were totally bought in to capitalist societies. Boom and bust is fine as long as we enjoy the boom and moan through the bust. That was just the way we lived our lives. And we'll recycle if we feel like saving the planet. And if we don't, then we won't. And actually, you won't judge us for it. Generation Y, on the other hand, is the conformist generation. So all those of you who held up your hand, as rebellious as you think you are the conformist. And what's really interesting about Generation Y is, whilst they're the conformist, so if you ask a Generation Yer who your role model is, actually, number one, anyone want to guess? Mum. Weird. Number two, dad. Even more weird. And number three, friends. Okay? Whereas we had like superstars and rock stars on our list. So the whole way the generations have changed is pretty much fundamental. So peer endorsement is far more important. Family life is really, really important. So there lies the difference. But that has a huge implication in the way that we retail to this generation. So for those of you who are tweeting, just before you tweet and press tweet, just think, will this get this man sacked? If you feel it will, don't tweet it. If you think it's okay, then tweet it. So I look at M&S, hopefully there's no one here from M&S here, and you go into M&S, big poster, there is no plan B. Generation X is like, oh my God, that's amazing. They've got a plan A and they're going to save the planet. Generation Y, why are you talking about it? I mean, that's a way of life, right? So for all the razzmatazz of how we shall save the planet from that retailer, the reality is Generation Y just don't give a damn because that's the way they live their life. This is a conformist generation which has actually taken the values of X and made it their own and taken it on to the next level. So the way we retail to this generation is going to be fundamentally different to some of the people who didn't show their hand. So they fuse their lives with technology. You see this. So you see the old, have you seen this, right? So people buy an iPad, and Generation X buy from Amazon the ability to create a Bluetooth keyboard, okay? So they try to make that iPad into a laptop. And that's what Generation X, I'm sorry if anyone's got one, by the way. I actually did toy with it for a little while, and I got one, and I thought, what am I doing? It's meant to be a tablet. It's not a laptop. But that's what Generation X does, whereas Generation Y embraces every bit of technology, and actually they ask really difficult questions, like why doesn't it do this, and why doesn't it do that? So they like instant gratification. Generation X is into deferred gratification. We'll work hard now and find the rewards later. Generation Y is, well, I want the reward first, and then I might just give you my data. So it's a whole different approach to how we market to this unique generation. So friends are the biggest influence. They don't want to be different. They want to be accepted. So my generation was absolutely about looking different. You didn't have the same hairstyle as your friends. You actually worked really hard by getting up early to look really different. Whereas Generation Y are quite happy to fuse along looking like twins. Look at yourselves, guys. Come on. So that's where it's changed. And actually, it's acceptable to be the same because actually, your point of difference doesn't come by having red hair. Your point of difference becomes by the way you live your life and your values. Again, that requires a different form of retailing. So, they love the opinions. Now, this is a really interesting generation, and I don't mean to be rude for those of you who did put your hand up, but I also call them the generation of just nots. And what I mean by that is, unfortunately, Generation Y took all the values of Generation X and all the wants and all the desires and all the aspirations. But unfortunately, what happened was the world moved on and the world changed. So we went from boom, bust to amazing boom to what has now turned out to be a terrible bust. But we live in austerity. And what that means is this is a generation of just not. They're just not, in the main, going to own their own house. They're just not going to be able to get their first car at 18, which we took for granted, albeit a Lilac Mini Metro. But nonetheless, we had those things. And this generation doesn't have that. So it's a totally different psychology. And I've met a lot of Generation Y people who are hard workers, but unfortunately are just not going to have the same things as Generation X because the world moved on. So, Gen X start to adopt Gen Y characteristics, and this is the really interesting thing. I call this mutton dressed as lamb, but there you go. So this is where my generation think, oh my God, actually, I thought I was really young. I think I'm quite cool. I think I get the way of the world. Then I go and order something from Amazon which makes my iPad into a laptop, but I'm still cool. And actually, do you know what? You see them, Generation Xers, walking around the road, bumping into lampposts, because actually they're not a generation of multitaskers. Generation Y are, because you're fused in technology. You're able to multitask much easier than Generation X. But we look at you and think, no, you will not take our top spot, because actually I too can text, tweet, do a Facebook status update, and walk to the train station all at the same time. And if you can do it, I can do it. So we are now starting to adopt the Generation Y characteristics. And that creates another dilemma for retailers, because you've got Generation Y who want to be marketed to in one way. You've got Generation X who have accepted being marketed to in one way, but now want to be Generation Y. So as a retailer, what do you do? So technology clearly is leading the way. By 2020, the web will play some role in customer journeys. 68% of all clothing and footwear sales will be resulted in whether it's research or the actual transaction, the web will play some role in that. Store sales will drop between 15 and 20%, and only 32% of sales will be captured purely in stores from 72% in 2010. That's a mammoth shift in the way that actually we operate. So this is what happened to the world. There were these guys, then there was this guy. And for anybody who's read Drapers this week, you know, in that I said, the moment that Amazon buy Argos, the world will change forever. Keeley, you can take the news back, said it was dramatic. I think it's a reality. It will change the world. And the reality is that, you know, when that, and if that happens, if it won't be Argos, it'll be something else, these people will do a better job than what traditional retailers are doing. Apple is not a retailer, but it's the best retailer in the world. And that is the challenge that retailers face. They're doing our job better. And what can we learn from the new kids on the block? You've got these guys. I'm a little bit biased on this because, as you probably know, I used to work at ASOS, so it's close to my heart. But actually, these guys have changed the way that actually retailing for clothing happens online. They've led the industry. The multi-channel retailers only became multi-channel because the pure play guys took over. And all we were doing was taking back our territory. And it was as simple as that. And there's been a journey. So, you know, emails which are okay to emails which get better, models, non-models, and then there's been a sharpening up of the service proposition. So these are some of the things that we do at Aurora. You know, we have a whole suite of delivery options. So an entry price point at super saver level to an exit price point at 90 minutes or same day. And some people think it's a PR gimmick. I think it's a way of life. Our fastest e-commerce order was 15 minutes. And that is amazing. It was a very, very lazy customer, but it was amazing. She wasn't far from the shop. She could have come down. But actually, we delivered it to her in 15 minutes. That's brilliant. And we do that in partnership with Shuttle. It's revolutionised our service proposition, and it will only become more and more key to what we do. So last month, we rolled that out to 90% of our stores. So it's now a nationwide service. So, omnichannel, multi-channel, God, was God, all of that. This is where it started. It was stores and web. It moved to multi-channel. So stores, web, mobile apps, Facebook shops, whatever you want to add into that mix. But ultimately, this is where it's moving. And all this means is you can have one or many channels, but your inventory needs to be the same. And the moment actually that, you know, our business model changed was when we actually became an omni-channel retailer. So now our mantra is if it's available anywhere, it's available everywhere. So if you are sitting in Brighton ordering online, but the online store has sold out, we will ship it to you from the Aberdeen store. We just split your basket and explain that it's going to come on 2 deliveries. It's taken a bit of what Amazon do, it's taken a bit of what ASOS do by having a single inventory, but it's actually multi-channel, truly embracing the omni-channel way of life. And it's doubled our conversion rate. So it's a really important part of the process of making sure we move to omni-channel retailing. So things are going to change. My advice is just think outside the box. You know, omnichannel is a mashup of a digital strategy and a store strategy. It is about making sure you've got that product available to customers at all times. And the reality is, you've got to differentiate or die. And Martin mentioned about Generation Y, our shadow board. This is a bunch of bright young things who shadow every single member of our exec, and they are a shadow board in their own right. We went through a voice comes X Factor, comes apprentice style selection process across the business through retail and head office, and we've ended up with a shadow for each one of us. We are not their mentors, they are ours, and we run by decisions and ask them how would they do it. Sometimes it's bizarre because that's just a lack of experience, but with their insight in the way that the world works and hopefully our experience, we hope we can actually make better business decisions. So if I were you, I'd put your Generation Y people at the heart of your decision-making process. I would create shadow boards because they have so much to add. And actually, I would make sure that at the forefront of those business decisions is a modern, relevant way of actually reaching your consumer. Thank you.